we never get to success with one step. There's stumbles along the way, and then eventually one day you look back and realize, hey, I made it. The limit, I don't believe that. Sky's not the limit. The sky's the starting point. I believe that are here for a purpose. It's to motivate, it's to inspire, it's to let someone else know that, hey, you can do this too.
Today on the show, I'm happy to have David Green. He's the CTO of Cybersecurity for Hitachi. David, what kind of brought you into the space of cybersecurity? I know the past was riddled with some different jobs in your career on the career path where you made it to computer science.
First of all, Chad, thanks for having me on your podcast. This is really cool. I love the title, Failing to Success. We never get to success with one step. There's stumbles along the way, and then eventually one day you look back and realize, hey, I made it. In my case, my original goal was to go into medicine. I was actually inspired by Dr. Benjamin Carson. After meeting him in Carson, I told my mother, okay, I want to be just like him. And I set out, did my first year, did my second year. And while I was in the second year of uni, I met some of my friends who were in natural sciences came over for some help to present data for research that they had done. And I had this brilliant idea to write a computer program in Pascal to present the data for them. For me, it was just a hobby. I knocked it out the park. They did it. They got their grade and everybody was happy. But I made an impression on the professor, then went to the dean for the School of Computer Science and said, hey, take a look at what this kid just did. One thing led to the other. They sat me down in a meeting with my mom and said, hey, you've already completed so many credits. Why don't you consider switching faculties? We do believe that you're going to make an excellent neurosurgeon, but we think you're even going to be better at computer science. My mother said, hey, nothing tried, nothing gained. I really think this is the path you should take. So I followed that with the intent of going to work for one of the big technology companies at the time, IBM, Microsoft, etc. I ended up in banking. So go figure how that works. Spent about 10, 12 years in banking, made it all the way to the top as a CIO. And while I was in banking, the concept of cybersecurity started to raise its head in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that's where the interest came in for me. I had a 1-year stint at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which really opened my eyes. And then from there, I just went all in. And I was lucky, extremely fortunate to have worked with some multinationals, Fujitsu, Symantec, and most recently Hitachi Cyber, which is the cybersecurity company within the Hitachi family. So that's how I ended up to where I am today. And cybersecurity is perhaps the hottest topic right now for everyone. But beyond that, I am more focused today, not so much on trying to help companies prevent cybersecurity challenges, but more the focus is around how do we become resilient? I think that's what's required. How do we continue, even if something were to happen? Because I can only do so much before something happens. But if it happens, how do I treat with it and keep the wheels turning? So that's where my focus is today.
How do we become resilient? What are some of those key things?
Resilience, that's an excellent question. So it's not a one-stop kind of one shot in the dark. It's a continuous effort. I grew up in the islands, so we're accustomed to hurricanes, and after you've been pummeled by 1, 2, 3, 4 hurricanes, the idea is how do we get the island back on track after a hurricane passes? Do we need to perhaps change the way we build? Do we need to change the way as a people culturally we treat we're stocking up on things just in the event? And it's similar to friends who I have who live in the Midwest because the tornadoes typically crash through there. They do the same thing. They have their shelters, they go down into the basement, they have their supplies, etc. So it's just thinking ahead. So for organizations, when you ask that question, how do we become resilient? It's really coming down to figuring out what's the minimum valuable proposition that I need to have for an organization, for my organization. And if something catastrophic were to happen outside of the world blowing up, what do I need in order to ensure that Chad and anyone else who comes to me for service can still be serviced, even at the most minimal level, right? Once you figure that out, then you basically put the building blocks in place and say, no matter what happens, this is the minimum that I'm going to deliver. I'm going to ensure that this can be done. I'll figure out how many resources I need and keep on building on top of that. And then it just becomes cyclical. After you go through your first iteration, you review it and you build on top of it, you strengthen it, and you keep building out over time. It's something that's rinse and repeat. And of course, as I mentioned before, it's cultural. You get it ingrained into the people. It's not just about you, the CEO, or you, the COO of the organization. It becomes something that's infectious for everyone. So anyone and everyone at any point in time can pick up the ball and keep it going for you. That's how you get the resiliency.
And then if something does happen, how do we keep the wheels turning?
So if something does happen, this is where and I'm probably going to dig into the weeds from a practitioner perspective. This is where you get the playbooks in place. In cybersecurity, we have things known as incident response plans or incident plans, similar to business continuity plans. So you sit down and actually define, what does an incident look like? What are the roles? What are the responsibilities that I need when said incident goes off? Who is going to do what? How do we work together? You literally document this, but it goes beyond just doing the documentation. You also want to test it. So you'll do tabletop exercises. What if scenarios? You play game theory. You play the whole thing out. Practice makes improvement. So the more you practice it over time, you figure out where your weak spots are and you can improve on it. And then eventually, when something does happen, it's not a case of the chicken running around, oh my God, the sky's falling, but you already know what to do. So you can go about it in a calm but measured approach and deal with the situation at hand. So there's no need for panic, so to speak, because you've practiced this 1,000 times.
So now you've moved into your next role here with Hitachi. Do you think this will be the final kind of position? Now you're focusing into cybersecurity, or is this just the next thing to go into?
My friend, we're failing to success, right? So success never stops. No, this is not going to be the end for me. This is just another step in the route. This is just another step in my career. I'm going into a new role now. I have actually switched companies. So I've moved over from Hitachi Cyber, which was focused on all things cybersecurity, to Hitachi Bantaro, which is a larger company that traditionally has been focused on storage infrastructure. So think about all the data that we generate as companies, as human beings. That data needs to sit somewhere. So Hitachi Vantara traditionally has built the infrastructure to house that data. And that becomes important because going back to the little question you asked for about resiliency, there's the need for backup and recovery. That's why we have the data storage. Beyond traditional data storage requirements today, I think a lot of customers are very concerned about cybersecurity from the standpoint, if I were to have a ransomware attack, how do I know that my data is still good? What do I need to do? And so these are all of the things. And if you pay attention to the news, you'll hear it. Cyber attackers come, they grab data, they then come back. Hey, I have your data. I need some money here. And the list goes on and on. So in the role that I'm going into, we're incorporating the message of cyber resilience, not just cybersecurity, but cyber resilience into the messaging of data storage, because this is now threat number one that organizations have to contend with. It's no longer just about, I need to ensure that I have my backups. I need to ensure that I can recover from my backups. But there's the question around, how do I protect the backups primarily from a cyber perspective to ensure that A, the integrity of the data is always maintained, and B, the availability of the data is there when I need it most. And of course, the last one is the confidentiality. You don't want your personal information getting out there for everyone else to see. So that's how we now stitch the cybersecurity component into the data storage conversation. So that's the role that I'm going into, and I'm super stoked about it. Looking forward to really making a mark where that's concerned. And then after I do that, like anyone who's super ambitious like me, you're thinking ahead. Where next am I going to go? What next am I going to do? You're moving through the C-suite. What one day maybe you'll be the one sitting in the hot seat to run the company as the CEO, or maybe be on the board. So for me, there's that saying, the sky's the limit. I don't believe that. Sky's not the limit. The sky's the starting point. It's as far as I want to go. So that's how I see it.
Dude, if any of our listeners wanted to follow you on socials or reach out, how could they do so?
So you can always find me on LinkedIn. One of the things that I like to do is I like to share my content and share my thoughts. I believe that knowledge should be free. It should be given to everyone and anyone. You can always look for me, David Antonio Green, on LinkedIn. On Facebook, I don't post a lot of business related stuff on Facebook. Facebook is more for me to keep in contact with my friends and my family, etc. But yeah, you can always find me on Facebook as well using the same name. But be rest assured, if you follow me on Facebook, you're going to see something motivational because I believe that are here for a purpose. It's to motivate, it's to inspire, it's to let someone else know that, hey, you can do this too. I'm not just a unicorn. You can be one as well. And then, of course, with guys like yourself having podcasts like Feelings of Success, if people watch this, I'm certain they're going to be like, if he could do it, well, I can do it too. Yeah.
Well, thank you, David, for coming on the show and everybody for listening to another episode of Feeling Success. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe. I'm your host, Chad Kalecki, and we'll see you next time.